So Oliver Dowden is facing Prime Minister's questions instead of Rishi Sunak again today because apparently when Sunak promised that there would be accountability at every level of his government, he meant every level except for his. And today Dowden mainly bragged about the Tories' failures and started by attacking Labour's plans to make private schools pay tax like any other business.
We have seen from the Labour Party them putting the politics of envy above the interests of children in this country. Recent analysis shows this could lead to over 40,000 pupils leaving the schools they're in, placing further burdens on existing schools and costing £300 million.
So we're talking about private schools having charity status and therefore not having to pay as much tax. Now for starters, charities are supposed to make the world a better place, but the main consequence of private schools as a whole is that the richest kids in the country get an even more unfair advantage over the rest. So giving them tax breaks to make it a triple advantage in the name of charity is insane. The problem is that the UK is one of the most financially unequal of the richest countries in the world, and so we clearly have the resources to teach all of our kids, or those private schools wouldn't exist, but those resources are concentrated among the richest kids in the country. And so the Tory warning of what if they all join the state school system, yeah, except for religious and special needs schools, they should. And you should tax the rich and fund that properly so that every kid gets a decent education. And then he brags about
record investment from this government in education.
That's funny because the expert that you put in charge of helping poorer kids recover from the damage that the pandemic did to their education quit because you weren't spending nearly enough money. And then after a back and forth about the levels of child poverty, this happened.
How many kids don't have a permanent address today compared to when Labour left office in 2010?
We can exchange all these numbers across the dispatch box. It is this government that has lifted 400,000 children out of poverty.
So I looked up what he's referring to. He's talking about when they added £20 a week to universal credit just after lockdown, which the Child Poverty Action Group said would lift 400,000 kids out of poverty. But they then took away that 20 quid and the same group is saying that that pushed 400,000 kids back into poverty. And this week's report from the Institute for Fiscal Studies says that the replacement scheme is 40% less effective at combating poverty. So he's the one throwing around numbers, but they prove that they've hurt people.
I would take absolutely no lectures whatsoever from the party opposite about how we help children in the most need.
That's kind of the problem. Like when Labour tried to tell you to give the poorest kids in the country free school meals during a recession, you said,
if you want an issue really tackled, don't put it down as an opposition day motion if you want to build a coalition in Parliament.
So kids go hungry this Christmas because you don't like the parliamentary process.
Then he claims that they're
delivering on our pledge to reduce the debt.
Yeah, national debt is at the highest level in 62 years. Then he claims that they're
cutting NHS waiting lists.
Highest level since records began. And then when someone calls out his government's decision to paint over a cartoon of Mickey Mouse because it's too welcoming to refugee children, he says,
I'll tell the honourable gentleman what real compassion looks like. And that means stopping the vile people smuggling trade across the channel, condemning women and children to death. This government is taking action to deal with it with our Stop the Boats bill, and that party shamefully 18 times last night voted against it.
Yeah, so much compassion trying to send desperate refugees to a country that the Court of Appeal has deemed to be unsafe. And the children that are too young to send there, you want to make sure that they never smile again, because apparently that's what compassion means in your party. But at least you're consistent because you seem to want kids to suffer regardless of where they're from.